Chapter 8. Which way is home? What's down there? Kev asked, standing back and craning his neck. What do you see? Holding on to the edge of the doorway, Raymond lowered the flickering lamp below the opening and bent down. It's a cellar, and I see. The sound of Raymond's voice jerked Scott into action. He leaped forward and grabbed the back of Raymond's shirt. Get out of there! Scott almost screamed the words. Raymond looked up at him with wide, startled eyes. Now! Scott hauled him up the steps and snatched the lamp away. He turned on Rusty and Kev and Eric, who were staring at him with their mouths open. He's just a little kid. If you want to know what's down there, go find out for yourselves. He thrust the lamp into Kev's hands and dragged Raymond back into the house. But Scott, Raymond protested, I don't care what you saw. Scott sucked in a shaky breath and grabbed up their packs. We're getting out of here. Hey, Scott, wait for us. Rusty and Kev and Eric rushed through the door. We're coming too. What about the junk? Scott asked when he saw they were empty handed except for the lamp. You don't have to leave because of us. We can find our own way home without you. All the good stuff is too big to carry on our bikes, said Rusty. We'll have to figure out a better way to come back for it later. Scott, about Tiger, Raymond began. He isn't going to show up now, Scott cut in. If Tiger really meant what he said in his note, he would have stayed around to meet us instead of sneaking off like that. Scott glanced at his watch. It's about 4. We'd better get going. Scott was surprised to see the rain had let up. Let's go before it starts raining hard again. The sky was still dark, with lighter patches of pearly gray beginning to show here and there. The grass and weeds had been beaten flat by the rain. They leaped over the puddles and climbed on their bikes. Every bush and branch they touched released a shower of drops as they passed. They rode single file down the middle of the road to keep from getting any wetter. Everything looked so different now. The trees and bushes, sagging under the weight of the rain, had lost their familiar shapes. Even they came to the crossroads. When they came to the crossroads, Eric braked to a stop. Which road do we take from here? He asked. The branch Raymond had broken off and left in the middle of the road was no help. The road was littered with broken branches. Their tire tracks were gone too. The road had been pounded smooth by the rain. I think it's that one, said Rusty, pointing to the road on the left of the V. No, it's that one. Kevin pointed to the road on the right. It started to rain again as they got off their bikes to take a closer look at the road. The heavy, sodden drops soaked through their shirts and jeans. This is the road, said Kev. I remember passing that big cedar tree over there. Rusty rolled his eyes. There are cedar trees on this road, too. There's one, and there's one. They argued back and forth until Eric finally lost his temper. Make up your minds, he yelled. I want to get home in time for dinner. I know I'm right, Kev insisted, crossing his arms and jutting out his jaw. He started to explain again how he knew. Okay, Rusty threw up his hands in defeat. I don't care which way we go as long as we get out of here. Eric took the road on the right before they had time to change their minds again. They hadn't gone far when the road curved past a huge rotting stump Scott didn't remember seeing before. This can't be the right road, he called. That stump wasn't here before. We'd better turn around. Nothing looks the same after a hard rain, Kev called back over his shoulder. This is the right road. You'll see. They rode on and on for what seemed like forever. Rain dripped from their faces and hair and trickled down their necks. When they finally came to another crossroads, Eric slammed on his brakes. We should have been home by now, and we're not out of the woods yet. We're lost. We have to turn around and go back, said Rusty. If we don't, we'll never find our way home. Kev sneaked a look over his shoulder. The light had already faded to a shadowy twilight under the trees, and the sky was still a dark, leaden gray. It will be dark before we get back to the other crossroads, he said. Let's go on just a little farther. We can't just keep riding around, Eric argued. These woods are honeycombed with old roads. We'll never find our way out. Half a mile, Kev pleaded. Just half a mile, then if we don't find the main road, we'll turn back. From the looks on their faces, Scott could tell Rusty and Eric didn't want to ride all the way back through the dark woods either. And he wasn't sure Raymond could make it that far and all the way home, too. Raymond hadn't complained about being wet or tired. He just sat there on his bike, looking like a half-drowned pup somebody had tossed out in the rain. I say we go on, said Scott. Everybody quickly agreed. The road was level at first, then it began to wind up a long hill. It was a gradual climb. Scott kept an eye on Raymond. So far he had managed to pedal along, but Scott wasn't sure how long he'd keep it up. Scott was ready to insist they go back, when a wide patch of sky appeared up ahead. Told you I was right. With a new burst of energy, Kev pedaled on ahead. By the time they caught up, Kev was off his bike and standing in the middle of the road. What are you waiting for? Rusty called, but he didn't really need to ask. They could all see the wide gap where the road had been cut away. They all got off their bikes and peered down over the edge. At the bottom of a 20-foot drop was another road, a newer road. The hill they were standing on had been sliced in two to make the road below level. Now we know where we are, said Kev. That's the road to Sandy Cove Harbor. A lot of good that does us, Eric wiping the rain out of his eyes. We can't get our bikes down there without smashing them up, and we can't leave them here. We'd never find them again. We have to go back. Eric turned his bike around. We could lower our bikes down to the road, Raymond suggested. With what? Kev sneered. You got a rope in your pack? No, but we are all wearing belts, said Raymond. We can fasten them together and use them to lower the bikes down. I read about it in a book. Scott stared at Raymond. The kid didn't talk much, but when he did, he made a lot of sense. It just might work, said Scott. And anything is better than spending the night in the woods. Right. Eric took off his belt. Hand 'em over. He buckled the belts end to end and dangled them over the edge. Hey, this is going to work. Eric pulled the belts back up, unfastened the last one, and looped it around the bar on Kev's bike. Somebody will have to go down and unfasten the bikes when I let them down, he said, buckling the belt to the others again. Scott, you and Kev go, said Rusty. I'll stay up here and help Eric with the bikes. Come on, Raymond. Scott found a place along the bank that sloped a little. This is a good spot to go down. Raymond peered over the edge. But there's nothing to hold on to. How can we get down? On the seat of your pants, said Scott. On the seat of my pants? Raymond stared up at him. It's like going down a slide, said Kev. Watch. He sat down on the edge of the bank, pushed off, and leaned back. A minute later, he stood up on the road below and took a bow. Now that they had figured out how to get home, Kev was his old cheerful self again. Nothing to it, he called, but watch out for rocks on the way down. Raymond's hands trembled as he took off his glasses and put them in his pack. Scott couldn't believe Raymond was scared of anything so easy after being willing to go down into that dark, spooky cellar. We'll go down together. Scott sat down beside Raymond with his feet over the edge. Ready? Grim faced with determination, Raymond nodded. Go! Scott gave him a push to get him started. Raymond sucked in his breath. Suddenly, he threw himself sideways and started to roll. Scott made a grab for him and missed. Raymond was sprawling in the middle of the road when Scott hit the bottom. Are you hurt? Scott crouched over him, feeling for broken bones and dripping blood. Raymond blinked up at him. Don't think so. He sucked in a breath and then another. Got the wind knocked out of me. When he could breathe, Scott helped him to his feet and brushed off some of the mud. Raymond looked all right until Scott saw his face. Oh boy, Scott groaned. You're going to have a shiner. The bruise under Raymond's right eye was swelling fast. A shiner? Raymond touched his cheek with the tips of his fingers. What's a shiner? You know, a black eye. Scott was suddenly in no hurry to get home. He was going to be in deep trouble once Mom got a look at Raymond.